Disaster. The title of this episode is a perfect description of this episode.
We begin in 10 forward, where O'Brien and Keiko are arguing about what to name their upcoming son.
And in the cargo bay, Beverly is trying to convince Geordi to do something.
I'm telling you, you will be terrific.
And it turns out to be singing.
And on the bridge, Troy introduces Picard to a trio of terrible kids, who won a science fair and get to have a tour of the ship that they already live on from Picard.
And it's expectedly awkward as hell.
And this one kid doesn't even try not to look at the camera.
I planted radishes in the special dirt, and they came up all weird.
Then something rocks the hell out of the ship, which was a shame because that dude was just about to win that space chess game.
Some people we've never seen before take over on the bridge and say they ran into a quantum filament, which is of course not a thing.
And they're about to hit another one. The panels always explode right in their faces. Why don't they have some sort of safety measure for that? Because they know it happens every time. Or if it were me and I were bracing for impact, I'd just take 3 steps back and not die when we got hit. The computer has been totally knocked out, so nothing works. But their communicators don't work either, and I would think that those would function independently of the main computer.
But logic is not a strong suit of this episode.
True. Ro makes her way to the bridge, and the writing goes into expository mode when Troy says she's not familiar with one of the ship's main emergency protocols, which was completely ridiculous. And then she's put in charge of the entire ship, since she's the highest-ranking crew member on the bridge.
And she immediately begins buckling under the pressure.
In 10 forward, Riker again tries to take over the ship when he says they need to just assume everyone on the bridge is dead.
He asks Data if they can make it to engineering. Data says no, and then immediately tells him a way to get to engineering.
Geordi and Beverly are trapped in the cargo bay and are exposed to radiation in a dumbly humorous moment.
This wall is hot.
Where?
I like how Geordi gets completely thrown back, but it doesn't affect Beverly at all, and she's standing right next to him. He says a ruptured energy conduit must have ignited the material inside the bulkhead and started a plasma fire. If the material is that dangerous, why would you make bulkheads out of it? And Geordi says the barrels in the cargo bay will eventually explode if they continue being exposed to radiation.
Back in the turbolift, Picard again shows his blatant disregard of Starfleet regulations and continued random promotions when he makes all of the kids officers.
With the Pink Ranger being his new number 1. Data and Riker crawl through an access tunnel and become trapped by a coolant leak behind them and a CGI leak ahead of them. Back in the cargo bay, Beverly comes up with a brilliant idea that no one else could have thought of, which is to move the containers away from the source of the radiation.
Geordi seems very annoyed that it will take physical work to do. Back on the bridge, Troy continues to show that she doesn't really know anything despite being in charge, when both O'Brien and Ro have to explain absolutely everything to her, including that a containment breach is bad.
Which means?
Which means the ship will explode.
Oh man, okay, I'm really glad you didn't like this one. I was afraid you were going to like this one.
What? Why?
I don't know, I thought you were going to be like, it was unique and it was cool and whatever.
That's exactly how I sound.
Yeah. Ro manages to divert power from the phasers to the engineering control system, which upsets O'Brien, and it upset me too. I wish working on electronics was actually that easy. And if they can somehow divert power from one place to another from a location that supposedly doesn't have power to begin with, then they shouldn't have any problems.
Data and Riker are trying to find a way through an electrical leak, and Data decides to walk into it, which somehow turns it off. And I think they tried to explain it, but it didn't really make any sense.
Yeah, he stupidly suggests that he can stop the current because much of his body is non-conductive.
But why would that stop the current?
And why does the electricity become attracted to him if he's non-conductive? Picard gets one of the kids to get up through the top panel in the turbolift, where he determines that the turbolift is broken.
He realizes it's going to fall.
He says they have to leave him behind because his ankle is broken.
And directs the kids to climb out to get rid of them. But they refuse to leave him behind, much to his chagrin. You can absolutely tell he would rather fall to his death than stay with these kids.
We all go, or we all stay.
Beverly and Geordi finish playing with the cargo containers, but the radiation is still increasing. So Geordi suggests opening the cargo bay doors, which will suck out the containers, and the lack of oxygen should put out the fire. And I like how proud of themselves they were when they found a metal ladder that they could hold on to avoid getting sucked out into space.
What about this?
Yeah, that ought to do it.
Why did the gravity keep working in the ship if everything else turned off?
Good question.
In 10 Forward, Keiko is about to give birth, and of course Worf is the only person there who can help her.
And of course, there's a dumb joke about him telling her it's not a good time.
I thought for all the dumb humor in the episode, his jokes were the only one that kind of worked for me.
I still thought they were dumb.
I didn't say they weren't dumb.
Rose says she wants to separate the saucer section in case the engines explode, but Troy disagrees, which is supposed to be a character arc of her growing more confident.
At one point, they say they can't even determine if there are other people alive. But why can't Troy determine if other people are alive? She's been able to read life on planets when they're still on the ship. This is just down an elevator shaft. Picard has managed to make it out of the turbolift with his broken ankle, and we don't see him do it because the writers probably couldn't figure out how that would actually happen.
The kids probably climbed up, tied it to the ladder up there, and then Picard climbed up with the cable using his hands.
Don't try and justify this episode.
No, I think that's what's supposed to have happened. Because we see the cable, we see him telling them to pull it out.
He does not have that upper body strength.
Bald head gives you like +5 strength, though.
And then they climb to try and find an open door. And to make themselves less scared, they start singing, which was, yeah. So they still had the cable tied around all of them. Was that supposed to be if a kid fell off, the rest of them wouldn't be able to hold on? Because I don't see that happening.
And the Pink Ranger commands the other kids to stop whining, which is supposed to be a character arc of her growing more confident. Keiko's baby is about to be born, and I like how she was going around helping everyone before, but now that she's the one that needs help, Worf is the only one helping her.
And there are more dumb jokes.
Beverly tells Geordi what they will go through when they depressurize, and she confidently says they should resist the temptation to exhale, which is the opposite of what you should do.
Long story short, it works, but it was a close call.
I did like their acting when they were stumbling to the panel.
Back on the bridge, they're working on sending the power down to engineering, and all of a sudden, crewman number 62 is back. Why wasn't he in their meeting before about what to do? And the dangerous thing that Ro was so concerned about actually happens, and the ship almost explodes, but O'Brien just stops it. But apparently it's still a threat, because Ro says it could happen again. But then why couldn't O'Brien just stop it again?
And Troy confidently says that she doesn't care if they all die. I mean, that she says she will only separate to saucer section if she decides to. Riker pulls an Ash with Data and connects him to the door controls in the area. And I like how when Riker is performing surgery, he sets things up in a way where his hands are behind Data's head where he can't see what he's doing. And Data does eventually succeed in stabilizing the warp field or whatever the hell was going on.
And back on the bridge, we continue with the blatant writing that an 8-year-old could have done.
Oh, that was my least favorite part of the entire episode.
I was wrong, Counselor.
You could have easily been right.
Picard and the kids escape.
And Keiko has the baby.
And the baby is actually real, which surprised me. Later, everything is okay, including Picard's completely healed broken ankle.
And the trio of terrible actors give him a plaque.
And he tells them they will still get their tour.
And of course, we can't escape this episode without one more stupid, annoying, idiotic joke. And I'm not even going to put it in here, just know that it was dumb. Disaster, overall.
I really like the idea behind this episode. Putting these characters in unusual situations and isolating them from each other in unexpected groupings is a great idea. Even the disaster movie homage was a cool idea, but an idea is just an idea. Everything around that, the actual story and the character moments have to work, and this episode dropped the ball and then ejected it from the cargo bay out into space. Every action taken by a character in this episode other than Worf, who was dealing with a real-life situation, was in reaction to events that didn't make any sense. Nothing about the problems that any of the other characters were dealing with had anything to do with reality, which was made even worse by the copious amounts of nonsensical explaining that they did at every step. When you're explaining things that don't make any sense and trying to pass it off as science, am I supposed to just let my eyes glaze over and turn into a brain-dead vegetable? That's not my idea of an enjoyable viewing experience. And the predictable and unearned character arcs weren't any better. I gave this episode an F+. Plus because I liked the idea.
I gave it an F. What the hell was this episode? Out of curiosity, I did some background reading on this one. I was not surprised to find out that the writing staff got some ideas from random outside people and then said, let's just throw in a bunch of stuff without really thinking about it, because that's exactly what this episode felt like. Like you said, this could have been an opportunity to have everyone do their own thing, have some character development, but man, way to just drop the ball on everything. And the writing staff thought it was the greatest thing ever to have Riker take Data's head off. They could not stop gushing about how awesome that would be. The kids were not good actors. No, you know what? Nobody was a good actor in this one. Particularly the people on the bridge. It was so incredibly basic. I have expected O'Brien to say, Counselor, we're having what's called a conflict. A protracted discussion where there are two opposing viewpoints. And in the end, it will resolve, in this case, with one side being correct and the other side being incorrect. And don't worry, we'll be sure to let you know which is which. And how did Troy not know anything? She is an officer. She went to Starfleet Academy just like the rest of them. It was a disservice to her character to have her be so dumb in this episode. And what about Geordi's singing thing? What was that for? Where was that going? You know, I'm done talking about this episode. It was dumb. Skip it.
Agreed.